Hello and good morning and good afternoon to everyone across the country that has been able to dial in and join us on yet another one of our sessions to briefly talk about different aspects of what it means and actually what you have to do to apply to become a Tillman Scholar. We're going to do a couple of things within this particular session, but at the real heart of the matter, we're actually going to talk a little bit about what these essays mean. But before doing so, I do want to take a little bit of just a minute or two just to reemphasize some of the primary points that we emphasized in our last session that we did last month. And at the end of the day, what we're really looking for is pure talent. We're looking for those remarkable military veterans and spouses, those that have values that match with the values of this foundation, the values that define the legacy of Pat Tillman, as well as we're looking for those remarkable human beings that are very much willing to engage in a community. We're looking for applicants and candidates that can both simultaneously benefit from as well as contribute to not only the academic opportunities that come with being a Pat Tillman Scholar, but also the professional opportunities that come with that, the leadership development opportunities that come with that, the service opportunities that come with that, and the opportunity to make an important impact. All of those things, all of those very big and important ideas are really at the heart of what we are trying to do within our foundations management of this application process, and that is to select the absolute highest aggregation of talent we can find that we can then make a subsequent investment in that will in turn have an impact and create a ripple effect throughout the world. Now, last time I emphasized to you actually 5 sort of points, just talking generally about what this application is and what the foundation supports and what being a Tillman Scholar means. One, my general advice anywhere is know what you're applying for. Know what it is in terms of all the different components, all the different opportunities that emerge from becoming a Tillman Scholar. Not just the scholarship, but also this remarkable community of which you can be an active and engaged part. The second point that I emphasize is to learn, right? To visit our website, to read through, to watch the videos that our team here has put together. A remarkable sort of collection of stories, a remarkable collection of different areas where veterans, spouses just like you, are succeeding in making an impact. The third point was to check out our frequently asked questions on the website as well. We're going to actually take a look at one of those questions here in particular here in the next couple of minutes, and then open it up to some of your questions here. But reading those frequently asked questions, absolutely a critical piece, I think, just to understand how to navigate your way through an extensive application, as well as to do so successfully. The fourth point is to talk to us. Again, reach out to us at scholarships@pattillmanfoundation.org. That is your lifeline, particularly as an applicant, really to get additional information. If you come across something that isn't perhaps clear in whatever ways, please ask that question. And then my fifth point when I spoke with everyone last was to talk to a Tillman Scholar. That is the best way to understand what it means to be a Tillman Scholar. It's the best way and probably the strongest voices that we have, the most powerful voices that we have to articulate what the different aspects of service, of scholarship, of humble leadership, and of impact that really comprise the heart of this organization and of that Tillman Scholar community. So all of those 5 points that I made last month, they still apply. Now today, I'm going to take a little bit of time reviewing the application itself, and I'm specifically then going to talk about what those essays mean. Because at the end of the day, at the heart of that application are 2 400-word essays. And what I would pose to everyone watching this, be it live or be it recorded, is how are you going to employ those 800 words to tell your story? That's the first order question to keep in mind. Now, before getting into that, though, I do want to just give a brief sort of overview of what our application looks like. And to be quite frank and candid, it's a long application. It's a different application than what you filled out when you were applying to college, be it the undergraduate level, the graduate level for multiple degrees. It has a different focus and a different purpose. But when you think about the application broadly, I would encourage everyone to look at it really as 8 different sort of components. And that you will be taken through the online application process, filling out those different components that are there. But it's important, I think, to think about the application, those 8 sections, because to be quite frank, up to 30 different people by the time an applicant is completed until that application is through the final steps of our process and emerges as a Tillman Scholar, up to 30 different human beings, 30 different sets of eyes will take a look at that application. I think that's an important fact to keep in mind. It's an important fact definitely to keep in mind when you're in the midst of filling out that application come this next February. But as I mentioned earlier, there's 8 different parts of that application. The first is what we refer to as simply just as a cover sheet. Now that cover sheet is primarily just a top line summary information that's there. It'll include your name, the specific impact area in which your field of studies focuses, and it'll include what service that you served in or your spouse served or is serving in along those lines. So that cover sheet, pretty straightforward. In many ways, it's really helped just to paint a broad picture of who an applicant is, particularly as a reviewer takes a look at it. The second section that you'll probably spend a significant amount of time on is what we refer to as just general information. That has a wide range of different sort of inputs that are into it. Everything from your basic military information, which from time to time, if you've had prior service or if you had a break in service, that can get quite lengthy, to your current address, to your current email address. So all very, very important pieces that are a piece of that. The third piece is a little bit shorter, but probably as important, and that's your academic information. It will cover your enrollment status. It will cover the different schools you're potentially applying to if you're still in that application status come next February when you're executing and filling out our application. The fourth part is your character recommendation. As a reminder, it is not a letter. It's not a character letter or a letter recommendation. It's a series of some short questions that recommender then has about 100 to 150 words to provide responses about you concerning your viability, your strengths as an applicant. So again, it is not a letter of recommendation. It's in fact a worksheet that recommender will have to fill out. That is an important enough of an aspect of this application. That's what we're going to actually talk about next month in January. The fifth portion of the application is simply your resume. It is a PDF or a Word document. Actually, to be quite frank, it's a preferred in PDF format of your current resume. Again, just to be able to provide that summary of your professional work. The sixth element is a proof of military service. If you're separated from the service in whatever means or whatever fashion, a DD-214, great example of that. In terms of if you are a spouse, it is then the proof of your spouse's military service that we're looking at that as well. There's a very specific frequently asked question as well as series of responses that outline some of those specific aspects as well. The seventh piece that you'll be asked to fill out is some basic demographic and financial information. Significantly, and as this portion on the application clearly outlines as well, this is actually not a part of the selection process. We use this for our internal data. A portion of that information is looked at when we do our final determination of actual award amounts after scholars are selected. But selection committees do not see that particular piece, but it's still important to us in terms of the foundation, just as we are going about trying to provide the best services possible for our Tillman Scholar community. That ends up being a very important point of information that helps to define some of those challenges and some of those opportunities that are there. So those are the 7 primary parts of that application. And I mentioned that there are 8, and the 8th part are those essays. We generally will have 2 essays of not to exceed 400 words in length along those lines. That is your opportunity, a critical opportunity to bring all those other 7 pieces, sometimes 7 disparate pieces of that application, to bring it together. That is your opportunity to start to tell a story. And as I mentioned earlier, when you have up to 30 different people reviewing that entire application, but spending a lot of time in those essays, that is your time to tell the story up to, again, 30 different sets of eyes, 30 different experiences that are all seeking to, again, help this foundation find the greatest amount of talent that exists. So again, I'm going to actually then offer another 5 things. I started off with 5 things last time. I got another 5 things this time. But these 5 things that I'm about to emphasize next really focus solely on things that I think one should consider when starting to piece these essays together. So my first point, first and foremost, is that clarity is your friend. Clarity is your friend. So when you think, again, about all this different information that you've input into that application, but then if you're looking at different essays, and if in those essays, which are very limited in the amount of time and the amount of words you have to express yourself, think about the best ways to clearly convey motivation, right? To clearly convey influence, to clearly convey and concisely describe your goals and what all that means in terms of just your basic impact that you're focusing in on. So my general advice, again, I'm not gonna tell you to avoid split infinitives. I unfortunately can't copy edit anyone's essay, but my general advice starts, 1, with clarity, and that clarity is going to be your friend. The second piece is also to be very, very unique, right? We will deal with, in those 30 reviewers, and combinations of different 30 reviewers, will be looking at anywhere in the past. It's been between about 2,300 and 2,500 completed applications. That is a very, very tough cut, as we've described before, to get down to the 60 Tillman Scholars that are selected each year. So the importance of uniqueness in terms of voice, in conjunction with that clarity, is a key piece to think about in terms of the different choices you're going to have to make as an author as you're addressing these 2 essay prompts. Again, in 2 essay prompts of 400 words or less. Be as unique as you possibly can in conveying that story. The third piece is to be authentic, right? So when you think about this notion, it's one of the things that our scholarships manager, Tina, emphasizes a lot, that when she looks at all these applications, the essay is really what brings it together. And that degree of authenticity in your voice as an author is going to be critically important, particularly when you are trying to weave in something that a recommender is saying that you might not have immediate visibility on. It is really important in terms of what you're saying in those essays has a degree of authenticity that then reinforces what your resume states. It reinforces with the general information of just the basic military information of your military achievements or your achievements as a military spouse. All of those things integrate as well. So again, to review those top 3, clarity, 1, be unique was my second point. My third point was to be authentic. And my fourth point is then to use those elements of clarity, uniqueness, authenticity to start to tie things together. Easier said than done, and it's particularly easier said than done when you're only dealing with a limited amount of space in which to write. But that is your time to tie those things together, to tell your story again to those multiple reviewers. And my fifth and final point is going to be to revise, to share those essays with your peers, with people who know you well. Share them with other Tillman Scholars if you have the opportunity to ask those scholars and learn about this foundation. To revise, share those essays in a lot of ways, then get down to revising again. A total of 800 words within 2 essays, 2 400-word essays each. How are you going to use those 800 words as well as possible to convey your interest in this opportunity? Again, what we are doing at the end of the day, trying to build a community of like-minded individuals that have a broad array of diverse academic interests, a broad array of diverse backgrounds. But at the end of the day, we're also looking for the absolute best applicants that we can have that then move forward within this process. So again, 5 things for essays: clarity, be unique, be authentic, tie things together, and then revise, share, and revise again. We are right at 15 minutes. So again, we will typically have these go about 30 minutes in duration. So I'm actually going to open it up now in case there are any questions in the live chat room. Feel free just to type those questions in directly, and we will address them as they pop up. But again, thank you for the folks that are online now. Thank you each very much for your continued interest, as well as your desire to be a part of this remarkable community. First, great question in terms of in-depth. How in-depth do you want the resume? In a lot of ways, we will typically sometimes see, and in many ways, what different reviewers will sometimes comment upon is that there's sometimes there's two sort of modes and sometimes extremes within resumes. One is a relatively short resume, right? And in terms of the business world, that is one of the things that is a key marker right now. That less is oftentimes more in terms of being able to convey that. At the same time, in the academic world, a CV, a curriculum vitae, tends to be pages and pages in length. For this particular piece, again, I think it needs to be authentic to your specific goals, your specific impact that is there. Also, what I would encourage you to do is, just as you look at that essays, as I mentioned, the essays is an opportunity to tie things together. When you've completed the other aspects of the online application that we were asking you to complete, I would also then encourage you to think of that resume as another potential piece that brings those things together. Again, different things that you want to emphasize, that is the opportunity to do that. At the same time, that is sort of a sliding scale, right? So as you edit something potentially out of your essay, simply because you only have 2 essays of 400 words, it might become more important to emphasize that within your resume that's there. Another quick question that I saw pop in: is there a way to get feedback from a previous application? That answer is specifically yes. Reach out to Tina at scholarships@PatTillmanFoundation.org, and we can set up a time to be able to provide some additional feedback from that previous application as well. As a whole, however, I would also encourage you to start that feedback process on your own, right? I just offered 5 key points, at least from my perspective, that I think are really important to think about looking at the entire application from the lens of the essay. That is what I would encourage you to do yourself as you look back on that other application. And I think that could be a very, very good starting point to discuss a past application with someone on our staff. Let's see. Excellent question. Can we have Tillman Scholars write the character letter? That is a great question along those lines. That answer is yes. That is a key piece. That is something I won't talk in a lot of depth about today, because again, when we come back on January the 14th, same time, by the way, we're going to go ahead and emphasize different techniques, different things to think through along those lines. But in the past, we have had a number of applications have Tillman Scholar recommenders as a part of that application. Another question is a little bit more on the general line. Is this a last dollar scholarship? Yes, it is. We typically do not send checks directly to scholars, but we do reserve the right to be the last payer along those lines as well. Let's see some other questions. And again, if these are questions that are in here that aren't specifically towards essays, I'm not going to prioritize those for this particular session, but we are capturing these questions, and we will refer back to folks and get back to you on those. So I'm going to look for the next sort of essay question. What types of background information is relevant to the essay is one of the questions that's there. Having been in school a while, worked full time, I had the luxury of time for formal volunteering and public service along those lines. So within some of the general information, you do have opportunities to describe different aspects of service. That service, quite consciously and quite deliberately, is defined very, very broadly, right? Service exists in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's in uniform. Sometimes because of uniform service, you don't have a lot of time for outside volunteer service. Likewise, in terms of a spousal relationship to a serving member or a veteran along those lines. So in a lot of ways, as you think about service broadly, I think one of the key things the essays allow someone to do is to define that, on your own terms. And in a lot of ways, that would be an aspect, again, thinking generally of how one specific background might be able to work its way into the essays. And alternatively, as we'll discuss a little bit next month, how that also might work into some of the comments that a recommender might be able to provide. But I think that's a very, very very insightful question to think through. And that's what I would offer, particularly in this particular case. Think broadly. If there feels like something you need to have a little bit more flexibility with, that might be some information to bring forward into that essay. The challenge, however, again, is just the length that you have to bring some of those aspects out. Let's see. So in terms of one added question about university partner pieces, will the internal PAT selection committee see all the applications? University partners do some of the initial screening of those applications. We have visibility on all the applications that are there. So if it's a case where you're looking for feedback, things along those lines, we do have access to that. There is a certain degree of screening. So not all the university partner applications that are submitted and completed, not all of them move all the way forward within our particular process along those lines. We have another question in terms about whether it's better to be general with essay responses or potentially providing specific examples depending on the prompt. Generally, the focus in on the specific examples is generally better, right? So in each of the different realms and different aspects of a selection process, a large number of the applications are being brought forward as a conversation between different reviewers. And sometimes that's a conversation when you look at the final selection committee, all the reviewers on that committee are reading all of the applications and will have read the entirety of those essays. The specificity there, in a lot of ways, actually helps to increase that clarity, that first point that I emphasized, and really, really helps, I think, in a lot of ways, improve the qualitative aspect of some of those essays as well. So specific examples, as a general rule, not only help, but help significantly. So we had a rephrase question: will all essays be reviewed by both the selection committee and the university partner? Yes. So if a university partner application moves forward into our final stages, yes, those essays are reviewed. And so those essays are actually within each different stage of the process in terms of initial screening, be it by an at-large committee of Tillman Scholars or by university partner committees at their individual schools, where that happens in some of our semifinal, our quarterfinal regional rounds, or a semifinal round, or even prior to our final interviews that the staff conducts with all finalists. At each of those phases, even prior to the interviews, those essays are reread. So because of that duplicative effort, I think that is another reason that I emphasize that need for authenticity is really, really important. Just because in terms of being not only unique, but also being authentic and being clear is a key, very, very potent key of an essay. It also then helps prepare as well as makes for a very, very effective interview at the same time. So somebody says about authenticity and uniqueness has the potential of offending a reader. Are there any ideas we should avoid in the essays? I don't think so, right? One of the great things about an organization within that lives within the living legacy of Pat Tillman is that one of the things that I've heard people that knew Pat best always describe about him is that he was always interested in ideas. That if someone thought that they were going to go into a conversation asking him questions, it would very rapidly turn around. That he was always in this quest for ideas, and that is something too that we are in the quest for a broad array of ideas. Now, there are ways to have some very valid ideas that are expressed offensively, and I don't think that that's the point of this of this specific question. Quite to the contrary. But again, if that idea that might be controversial is still very important and fits, that brings your entire application together, particularly in light of something that you want to do, I think that's probably something you're going to have to, an author is going to have to make that choice. But I think that choice probably makes itself in a lot of ways. Question about old applications reviewed. Information in old applications is only used up to the point in time where we are providing feedback on some of those old applications. So if there's information from a 2018 or a 2019 application, it is not seen by anyone that is sitting on those selection committees for 2020. Someone like Tina, our scholarships manager, who manages the process but doesn't sit on those committees, she has access to that information. And again, that is why she is the conduit to be able to provide some of that information along those lines. Another question towards the end, we got a couple of minutes that are left. How heavily are those essays considered in the overall application? We don't have any official weighting on any of those different components that are there. But I know from the committee meetings that I have seen that the vast majority of the conversations that occur, the meaningful, deliberative conversations, the result of which are a decision to either advance a group of applications forward or not, the vast majority of those conversations come back down to those essays. It is hard, it is extremely difficult to overemphasize that particular aspect of the process. That something somewhere else in the application, it might cause a question, right? There might be something where someone would say, "Oh, wow, this is different from what their previous military experience might have been," things along those lines. Those questions, if they come up, to be quite frank, if it is an important enough question, you, as an applicant, will get an email or a text from someone on our staff looking to resolve that question. And the whole point of that is to, again, allow that deliberative conversation to very much be in the heart of what those essays are trying to convey. So again, I think with those broad points of writing clearly, writing with a unique voice, writing with an authentic voice, but most importantly, a lot of ways tying those things together and then revising to make sure that your intent is in fact coming to fruition. That is the heart really of the essay writing portion as we look at it, right? You know, and this is coming from someone who has read a lot of essays in this application process. I haven't had the challenge of squeezing all of that key substance into 2 essays of 400 words or less. I've done it in other examples, and I know how difficult it is. But that's at the heart, really, of what we are doing. A couple of other points on here. Cool. I'm going to see if there are any other questions along those lines. Here we have just about a minute left. Again, just in closing, I'll reemphasize those 5 points, and I've done it a couple of times throughout the past half hour. But what is really key, again, is that notion of clarity, that notion of uniqueness, that notion of authenticity, the ability to tie things together, and again, factoring in that time to revise, and to revise with a couple of different audiences in mind. When, again, you think about this application making its way through upwards of 30 people. Now, a large majority of those are happening at different committees along the way, But those are a lot of different sort of perspectives that are going to have to take those essays and react to them, and then put those essays and try to, in an imaginary, conceptual act, say, how could these essays then both contribute to as well as benefit from this remarkable community? Because at the end of the day, that is in fact what we are very much trying to do. So please keep your questions coming. Please stay tuned to this particular channel. January 14th, we'll send out email reminders again at 11:30 Central Time will be our next session. We'll pick up on some of the questions that we've had already about reviewers and about recommenders, and just a different way to look at that, as well as doing a quick review of what we've discussed here. And then our final session will be in February while the application itself is open. And again, we will look at just broad questions, broad frequently asked questions that anyone might have at that point in time as well. So again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your attention. But most importantly, thank you for the service that you have provided a wide variety of different communities. That is what we are about. We will often say that our focus centers on service, scholarship, humble leadership, and impact. And all of the people that are participating in this are clearly a part of that like-minded community. We wish you the best of luck. And again, if you have any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to let us know. Thanks, and have a wonderful holiday season.